Hi, Vinnie. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be with you as ever. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about this new book that we've just published recently called Monster, all about, in a way, the sort of dark side of technology, which I think only the sort of probably most Pollyannish or utopian or perhaps one-eyed vested interest holding people will kind of deny that a lot of the technology that we're all sort of talking about and implementing and thinking about at the moment, clearly is the source of a lot of kind of very positive things in the world, particularly with the pandemic ongoing, the ability to kind of continue to work, the ability to keep our networks going is all, predicated on the technology. But I think we can also see that increasingly there are sort of more and more downsides to a lot of this technology. And we think really the argument in our book is that we've got to sort of step forward as people who love technology, like yourself, somebody who's worked in technology all their career and knows that power and that positivity. We've got to sort of keep tech in a good place. We've got to sort of tame technology before it eats us alive, as I put it here. And I don't think I really need to make the case that that there's a lot of downside in the technology all around us at the moment. Anybody who's been at a dinner party or a table pre-pandemic when we could be together and sort of seen this scenario, I mean, knows what I'm talking about, how crazy that is. Parents are probably pretty concerned about what their kids are doing in their bedrooms of an evening with their phones. This was a heartbreaking scene I saw on a plane, again, back in the days when we could travel. This little kind of crappy little photo I took here. If you can see, this is a couple sitting in front of me on a plane, Boston to San Francisco, 6 hours, staring at their phones the whole time. And look, you can just squint in that photo. You can see a little baby's head there. And this baby was standing in front of these parents, and they just ignored it for 6 hours. And the baby, all the baby saw was the back of the screen as it was looking up at its parents. And again, that sort of is crazy, isn't it? And I think anybody seeing that would probably feel like I did. This is a picture of Jose Mourinho. The soccer fans, football fans listening to this will know who he is. He's a very famous soccer manager in Europe. And this was when he was managing a big club in England called Spurs. And he complained, ironically, putting this picture on Instagram. How do I manage a team? How do I build culture in my soccer team, my football team, when the second the team come in from the field, everybody goes on their phone? Again, he was sort of pointing out how crazy and absurd that was. What happened in January in DC, people going down these algorithmic rabbit holes and ending up in a very, very odd psychological space of kind of madness, frankly, at the bottom of that well. People have probably seen the deep fake videos. Jennifer Lawrence turning into Steve Buscemi. People may have seen Sassy Justice, the South Park guys' new TV show, where again, this technology is sort of doing these incredible things, putting words into celebrities' voices in an incredible way. And it's funny and it makes us all laugh. And then you think about what happens when politicians can say things that they don't really mean. And I'm always reminded of, the famous Ronald Reagan moment, from the early 80s when he was caught on a hot mic saying, the bombing's going to start in 5 minutes. Imagine when in a deep fake, Obama or Biden or Trump or Putin or somebody can say something and it goes around the world on social media before we realize whether it's real or not. Again, it's sort of funny until the moment it's not funny. And I have a feeling with social media, with all of this connective technology, that what it's really sort of tapping into, Vinny, to be honest, is all the rage that people feel around the world is sort of being channeled into the technology in our hands. The Gilets Jaunes, the riots around Brexit, the problems in Hong Kong, all of the social strife in America last year continuing now. All of this rage that people feel is sort of captured if people know the famous Thomas Piketty book, Capital in the 21st Century, in his famous equation, R is greater than G. The rate of capital growth is as faster than the rate of the real growth of the real economy. And that rage that people are feeling is sort of being channeled through these machines that have, of course, become all the rage in the last few years. And so I don't feel like I need to make the case that technology is really in the middle of all of these macro, micro, personal, civic, societal trends in society, where again, we can sort of see the downside a lot of a lot of what's going on. I mean, again, I don't feel I need to make the case because it's sort of been made. People may have seen the Sacha Baron Cohen movie video all about Facebook. And again, it's not just older people like me or Sacha Baron Cohen. It's pop stars. This is the lead singer of a very popular band at the moment called the 1975, who's saying social media is sort of a double-edged sword. It's tearing our society apart. And all of this this feeling. Sorry, Vinny, do you want to say something?
Yeah, but is it technology, or is it, to me, I have a fairly simplistic view of the world. In fact, I'll say it, F the media, F the politicians. To me, those two groups thrive on our attention. They thrive on creating anxiety, right? And so technology is just a medium they use to get to us. Given free will, do we have to listen to them? Do we have to pay that much attention to them? I find more and more.
That's what this book is all about. And that's exactly the point. Technology is a neutral thing. It's neither good nor bad. It's how we as people use it. But what a lot of this technology is doing, Vinny, is through very, very sophisticated technology, algorithms predominantly, appealing to our worst angels rather than our better angels, and is rewarding all of this bad behavior. It's rewarding all of this rage that I'm touching on. And you're right, it's not just social media, it's the mainstream media as well. It's the business models of that old school technology and this new school technology are all predicated on finding heat and then throwing nitroglycerine on that heat for clicks or eyeballs. So this is really the point that I'm making, but I want to make it in a very, very personal way, because we can talk abstractly and conceptually, but this is where it gets really real, Vinny, I think. And this is really the motivator for writing this book. This was a college application, a supplementary application that I saw recently. You know this, Vinny. Other people around the world may not know this, that colleges in the college application process typically ask a kid to write a supplementary essay to submit alongside the test scores and their SAT scores or whatever. This is from a college down in Washington, D.C. And this is a great question. They asked a kid to answer. If you could advise policymakers on one action they could do to make the world a better place, what would it be? And this was the essay that I came across. And I won't read the whole essay. I'll just simply point out a few bits of it, because this really caught me short and really made me think. Cancel social media, delete it from existence. Facebook started a juggernaut that's plowing through my generation, destroying people's lives. They've manipulated, deceived, and cannibalized the minds of a generation. It's had the largest and fastest negative impact on the human race the world has ever seen. Again, remember, this is a 17-year-old writing this, not an old person like me. He goes on to say, I hate it, but being a Gen Y-er, it's impossible to get away with it, to get away from it. Social media has created a profound addiction crisis, far worse than drugs, gambling, alcohol, and tobacco combined. It's caused a mental health crisis on an unprecedented scale. Social media apps have created a generation of kids with crippling body issues, with anxiety and depression. They've caused an epidemic of self-harm and shocking suicide rates, and it's taking bullying to new level and intensity. These apps ruined my generation's childhood. And then this again, a 17-year-old saying we have to regulate, control, educate, restrict, and stand up this amorphous monster. And the reason this caught me so short, and you may have guessed this already, is that that was actually written by my son. Not prompted by me, not bidden by me. I know you've got kids. 18-year-old boys don't listen to their dad, hardly talk to their dad. So this is a kid who is born into this world of social media and is basically saying, help, I hate it. I want to get out of it, but I can't. And so to your point, Vinnie, of course, these are human issues. These are human problems. But the technology, which is now completely in the middle of a kid's life like this, is totally taking it to a whole different level because of the nature of those algorithms, because of the nature of doubling down on heat, finding an issue bubbling up and trying to, you know, as you quite rightly said, make that even more extreme and make that even more of an issue.
So and I see Facebook as two faces of Facebook, right? So there is the network that you and I are part of. You know, we have our individual networks, right? And then there's like our neighborhood community, right? And there is such a huge difference in the neighborhood community.
Again, Vinnie, let me make my point, because I'm not going to disagree with that at all. Social media absolutely has a wonderful role to play in society for all the reasons you just said. But let me just make the point. I'm not calling for the abolition or the canceling of social media. I, as a tech evangelist, somebody on sort of stages all around the world talking about this, of course I wouldn't say that. But I do feel as a parent that I have kind of involved my own kids in an experiment. They've been the guinea pigs. And I sort of feel now in 2021 that we didn't really know what we were doing in putting these incredibly powerful technologies into the hands of young children. And I think this is what the argument in our book is, that we've got to begin to fight back to tame this, not to cancel it, not to abolish it, but to tame it so it can be used in the way that you were just talking about, in a good way of building relationships and neighborhoods and bringing people together in a good way, rather than it be used to amplify very human characteristics, which we don't frankly need to amplify. That's what this book is about. And really the central idea of the book, really many, and I won't go through all of these because there's quite a lot of detail about different aspects of it, but the central idea that I want to sort of introduce in this session today is that we should have an age limit for social media. Because if you think about it, these sort of bad characteristics that my son pointed to are happening because we're giving these incredibly powerful technologies into the hands of immature people. And think about it, we don't allow kids until they're old enough, mature enough, responsible enough to drive a car. We don't let them drink, we don't let them smoke, we don't let them get married, we don't let them join the army, we don't let them buy a gun, we don't let them vote until we think they're mature enough to handle that. But we put this incredible technology into the power of small, children, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old children. And then we stand back in amazement when that situation that my son described happens. And then that is what these kids have been taught how to behave in this new world of cyber. And so I think the way to begin to fight back and the way to begin to tame this, to manage it, again, remember, I'm not saying abolish it, but to manage it is really the answer sort of staring us in the face. We need to teach people how to drive social media as we teach them how to drive a car. We need to establish a social media user license, like you get to drive a car. You're taught how to do that. You have theory, you have practice, you have to pass a test, you have a license that's revocable if you drive drunk or do stupid things on the road. I think that's a good model that we should introduce into social media So we can use it in a good way, as people use cars in a good way, but we don't kill ourselves in the process. And I think that's beginning to bubble up, sort of teaching kids how to do this. And I think that's a good thing. Now, again, you may get that, you may agree with this, and you may think, well, how do we do this? But again, I think that the underlying technology that we have at our disposal, in our hands, the technology like this, facial recognition, the technology, the algorithms that we use to manage the feeds of billions of people on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, those same technologies could be used to create the conditions I'm talking about. It simply is where there's a will, there is a way. This is the Greek symbol for where there's a will, there's a way. It's about having the will. If we have the will to do this, I think technologically the way is quite, is very much there. I think, Vinnie, that in tech and in broader society, we're at a crossroads with this incredibly powerful technology. There's one road we can go down, the road I'm sure you want to go down, the road I want to go down, where we do use social media, we use other technologies, algorithms, data in a good way. But there's very much a dark path here that I can see ahead, Paul and I can see ahead, and that's what we write about in this book. If we don't tame this technology, we're going to continue, I think, to go further and further down the bad road. And all of those things I touched on are going to get worse rather than better. And again, I put this in a historical context. This is a photo of a street in London in the 1920s, late 1920s. You can see already there are lots of cars on the road. So the automobiles have been around for 20, 30 years. It's sort of beginning to become quite widely distributed. But what you don't see on that road is any what I call infrastructure of safety. You don't see red lights, you don't see traffic lights, you don't see yield signs, you don't see roundabouts or rotaries, you don't see any road markings. Fast forward another generation into a picture of the same street, and that's what you see. You see the double yellow parking lines, you see the road markers, you see lights, you see bollards, you see all of that infrastructure of safety. And I think we're 25 years into Al Gore's information superhighway. And I think the next 25 years, as we put in place this architecture of safety, rules for the information superhighway to keep us safe, to allow us to use it in the good way that you're calling out, the way we want to see it used, but to prevent it continuing to be a scene of carnage. That's it. I mean, it's as simple and as complicated as that.
Then you make some very valid points.
Yeah.
My libertarian instincts, though, I'd like to see a little more personal responsibility. As parents, we can manage what our kids have access to, right? Anytime I hear we set up another government body to regulate, I tend to recoil. So
well,
I didn't like that one slide.
Vinnie, the regulatory frameworks that we had for the early stage of the internet, there was good logic to that. Keep hands off, laissez-faire, let this thing grow. But to imagine that we maintain that stance now, when tech is the most important industry in the world, it's the most financially important industry in the world, I just don't think that's a logical, credible position, frankly. Of course, we need to have rules of the road. Of course, the game needs to have rules. There are rules for every game. There's rules in banking, there's rules in every industry, in every activity. So I don't think there's a particularly strong argument to be made that we should continue to be completely hands-off in the way that we manage technology. Now, of course, I don't want to see either a course correction where we suddenly regulate this thing into oblivion or into a standstill of innovation. But again, I don't think that we can continue to literally treat this thing, which is a huge, huge industry controlling, as we put it here, on the machines that rule our jobs, lives, and future, and stand off with that libertarian view anymore. I literally just don't think that's logical anymore.
Well, look forward to reading it. Thanks for the update. I mean, look, it's crazy how much time people waste on this shit. You know, that to me is even more than the mental issues and all that. I worry about productivity. I mean, social media is sucked out a lot of our time.
Yeah, it's a total addiction machine, Vinnie, and people are completely addicted to it in their work lives as well as their non-work lives. And no, again, I've only really touched on one of the themes within the book, and you're completely right. I mean, we have a section called the Manifesto in the book where we talk about the personal agency we all have to deal with this. We're not saying in the book at all that it's all about government regulation. It's about a combination of our own individual actions every time we click, every time we pick the thing up. You're completely right. We have personal agency. But the point you make, though, about parents, again, I think have abrogated a lot of that responsibility. Again, this is why I feel personally agitated and motivated by this, because you know, I said to my wife, "Oh, don't worry, they'll be fine when we put these phones into the hands of our kids when they were quite young." And I think I did, like many parents have done, sort of just assumed it would be okay. So no, you're right. I think if it was simply a question of government regulation, that wouldn't solve the problem. It's a combination of personal agency and you know, some a smart hand on the tiller here.
Lots to think about, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinnie. Great to be with you.